God. We learn how to do that inside of this book. We learn how to do that by practicing the 12 steps with the sponsor and accountability. And what we did throughout this sermon series is we talked about how it's a stance for life. Letting go and letting God. It's not something, I let go of my compulsion to use drugs and to drink alcohol today and I don't have to worry about it again. No, it's the idea that when I do feel that compulsion, when I do feel that urge, I give it back to God. It's a stance of life where we constantly are turning back to God. We know that He has the strength to do it, but we have this tendency to default to things that help us, make us feel like we're in control so that we can have comfort. So when we see our life blowing up all around us, we're able to latch onto this one thing. And I know for me that was really true. My life was blowing up all around me, and the last thing I should have done was use. But that was the only thing I wanted to do because it was the only thing that made me feel like I had a sense of control in my life. And then we talked about willingness and how important willingness is inside of the idea of let go and let God. Because we all know that we can say that we're willing, and we can know that we need help from others, help from a sponsor, help from God, and help from our accountability. But it's a completely other thing to be willing to listen to their advice and to be willing to listen to God's instruction. And then we talked about how is it that we're even able to identify some of these character defects. You know, as we navigate steps 6 and 7, we have to think about our shortcomings. We have to think about our character defects. And some of them are very obvious. I call them the heavy hitters. You know, like doing heroin. That's a character defect, and it's pretty obvious, right? But maybe telling what we call a little white lie every once in a while, maybe that's not that bad. Maybe avoiding this person so we don't have to have a conversation, maybe that's not that bad. Maybe putting off something that we know we should be doing, and we are acting inside of a character defect of procrastination. How do we identify those things? And so we talked about when we are telling ourselves a narrative in our head, when we are justifying and rationalizing to nobody else except for ourselves, usually it comes out to somebody else too. We can throw the red flag, remember the challenge flag, and we could challenge our thoughts and think, what I'm justifying, what I'm rationalizing, is it actually worth me doing? Is it worth me pursuing? Is it worth me carrying it out? And if it's not, then we can think about, is this a character defect that I have to learn how to let go and let God? Because we're letting go of our tendency to do it, and we're letting God have it so that we can have His strength to move forward. That's what I call grace. And then we heard a really awesome testimony from Sarah, and she followed it up the next week with a really great lesson about how important our sex life is. And so when we think about that, we have to let go and we have to let God. We have to let go of our control and our preconceived notions of our sex life. And we have to let God into it. And we have to let Him influence how it is that we pursue a sexual relationship. How it is that we're able to overcome the things that we've been hurt by sexually. It's too important for us to just say, I'm going to let God have all of this, but I'm going to keep it to myself. And so this week, as we close this sermon series, I'm going to be talking about pursuit. And I want to ask the question, what are you pursuing? To me, answering that question is extremely important. As it is, when we answer this question, we will be able to measure our thoughts and actions against where we are headed according to what we are pursuing. And this helps us discern what we should let go of and what we should let God have. Now, before I move forward, I really want to think about that word discern or discernment. What does that mean? Discernment, as I found in the Vine's Concise Dictionary, which is a theology dictionary, it is to test, prove, scrutinize, as to decide. And so that means we could be looking to test some of our thoughts or some of our intentions against what we are pursuing to see if it's worth our effort. We could try to prove that what we're doing is right, that what we're doing is worth our effort. Or we could scrutinize our thoughts and our actions so that we can see if it's even worth any effort to move forward with. And when we do that, we call that discernment, the ability to make a judgment, a sound judgment, so that we can move forward with the best possible potential for a good outcome. And so, a natural question could be like, well, how do we go about doing this? And I would say, we know that word halt. When we're hungry, angry, lonely, tired, we need to slow down. But when we slow down, what do? We think about, we can pray for God's will and for his wisdom to come into our hearts and into our life. And if anybody here has ever met with me, I always start our meeting by praying for God's will to be done and for his wisdom to be revealed. And then we could think about how that is letting go of our preconceived notions. We are letting go of our understanding. We are not saying that we are completely reliant on what we know to be best. We're asking for information to come in from God. And then we can realize that a lot of times inside of our addictions, inside of our compulsions and our hurts, we want to isolate. And so we can move forward in discernment by calling our sponsor and our accountability. Instead of isolation, we're going to engage with community so that we can see if what it is that we're moving towards is actually worth our effort, if it's something that we should be doing. And if after having gone through a process that's similar to this, that you recognize that you found some support inside Scripture, that you found support through your accountability, and that you've prayed and maybe received some instruction by God, that there's a good chance that moving forward with this and being considered is going to be good. And so now, when considering what we need to let go of and what we need to let God have, some things, like I said, are super easy to identify. And so we could be thinking like porn. What are we pursuing when we're on the internet? What do we need to let go of? How do we let go of that? And how do we let God influence what it is that we navigate when we're scrolling through the internet? Pride could say, well, I'm not going to upload any software that's going to protect me through firewalls. That's for like children, right? But the idea is, are we holding on to our pride? Are we letting God have that problem? Are we letting God have that compulsion? Are we letting him speak into our life when we say, well, I'm willing to do stuff, but I'm not willing to do that, even though I know it would help me, even though I know it would help me move forward in my relationship, because now I can be transparent with what my searches are. Instead, our pride can shelter us from the freedom that we can find if we were to just let go. And something else that could be obvious would be like our addictions to drugs and alcohol. It's pretty obvious that we shouldn't use drugs and alcohol so that we can feel comfort inside uncomfortable situations, things that are out of control. But what does that mean when it comes to letting go of it and letting God have an influence in our life? It could be very simple, and we can make it so complicated. Letting go is saying, I recognize that as I continue to use these drugs and alcohol, that I have devoted my life to the pursuit of always acquiring it, because without it, I am so uncomfortable. I'm going through withdrawals. I'm not able to interact with people socially. And so, God, you don't understand. I actually need it. It's not just something that I want. But we can let God say, I'm going to take this from you, and he can give us tools that we can work through our recovery and through our community so that we have the ability to not act inside of our compulsions anymore. And it's the same thing when it comes to our codependency. If we're trying to control and manipulate others and therefore take away their free will so that they do what I want them to do instead of what's actually right for them or what's going to bring me peace at the end, we're not letting God show us how that we can love that person completely. We're only letting him do it to an extent that we find it suitable. And so when considering character defects, as we have been looking at steps 6 and 7, some of these are not so obvious. And this leads me to that same question. What are you pursuing? The Apostle Paul helps us answer this question when he says in Ephesians 4, verse 1, he says, "As a prisoner for the Lord, then, I urge you to live a life worthy of the calling you have received." Now, if you're in here or maybe you're watching online and you are not a Christian yet, I don't want to just skim over that. But allow me to explain what a calling is that a Christian has. The calling that Christians have received is pretty simple. It's to love. It's to love God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, and with all your strength. And it's to love your neighbor as yourself. And what I love about this passage in Ephesians is that Paul actually gives us something that we are able to measure this pursuit against. And so Ephesians 4, 2 through 3, he says, "Be completely humble and gentle. Be patient, bearing with one another in love. Make every effort to keep the unity of the Spirit through the bond of peace." Now, if you're not able to identify yourself as a Christian, I want to say I'm really happy that you're here and that you're always welcome back. But I found that when I wasn't able to identify as a Christian, it was because there was a couple things that would come to mind. When I thought about being a Christian, I thought about the people that would be picketers that would tell everybody that they're going to go to hell. All of the people that would be standing outside the abortion clinics or that would go to high schools or colleges and say, if you don't repent, you're going to hell. Or on the other hand, I would think of something along the lines of like Ned Flanders from The Simpsons. You know, I thought my identity would be robbed. I thought every time I was going to have to greet somebody, I would say, "Oakley dokley, howdy neighbor." I didn't think that I was actually going to be able to live with myself if I became a Christian because I wasn't going to be able to keep my sense of humor. I wasn't going to be able to keep my personality. I wasn't going to continue to enjoy the things that I always have enjoyed before the drugs, before the alcohol. I thought that I was going to lose my identity. And so if you find yourself not being able to recognize yourself as a Christian, I want to say, keep coming back and learning with us. Because I want to be humble and gentle with you. Here, we want to be patient. We want to be kind. We all recognize that there's something in our life that we need to overcome, so we want to bear with one another through the bond of peace. And if for nothing else, it's because we recognize that we are in recovery for a reason, and no person should be left up behind if they feel that they need help in order to pursue a better way of life. And so my encouragement to you is keep coming back because we have a lot of experience. We have a lot of strength. We have a lot of hope inside of these rooms. And we are always learning together about how it is that we can best move forward inside a space like this. And then inside of our recovery rooms, we have the ability to hear what somebody else's experience is that's similar to us in nature. And then at our recovery cafe time, we have the ability to talk to them and say, "Hey, I loved what you shared there, man. Could I please get your phone number? Let me call you when I have a craving. Please, would you be interested in sponsoring me? If not, could I ask you to hold me accountable? I want to come every Monday night. I want to hit 90 meetings in 90 days. And that's what we have to offer here. We have the idea, we have the ability to offer peace through a shared experience of recognizing that we all are on the same level here. We all need recovery. And so now, to everyone in the room, or everyone who's watching online, who can identify as a Christian, I want you to think about what your pursuit is again. Because the Apostle Paul really helps define what it is that we should be pursuing. And it is the fulfillment of God's purpose for our lives. And like I said, he gave us some measures on how we're able to hold that against what it is that we actually are pursuing. But I want, if you're thinking that this is really vague in the back of your mind, just stop thinking it and tell it to me. Say, Kurtis, that's really vague. 1, 2, 3. Kurtis, that's really vague. Yes, I know that's vague. The idea of just love, man. Yeah, just love. And just do what God's will is for your life. That sounds awesome, but it's super vague. And I'm not unaware of that. But I know that God's will for your life is specific to who you are as a person. God has a specific will for your life according to who you are. He's not going to ask you to do something that is not in alignment with his will for you in accordance to your personality and where you are in life. And so I want to share with you a story. About 3 years ago, I was at a major fork in the road when it comes to where I was going in my life. I didn't know exactly what was going to happen, but I knew that I was having to decide between two good things. And so discernment's going to really play a big part in this story. And what happened was I had my own tree company. It was called Canopy Tree Services, and I thought we were pretty awesome. We offered service. It was like same day, next day kind of stuff. I was able to work the service with other people. I had a guy that was training me inside of the tree service world that had been doing this inside of Palm Beach and Broward County for 30 years. This guy had made his money, and he just wanted to invest in the next generation of the people that were growing up inside of his business. And then on the other hand, I had the lead pastor of this church that was speaking into my life on a weekly basis. And he was training me, he was mentoring me to become a pastor for people in recovery, because I really felt that that was something that I was called to. After I had shared a testimony with some people who had come to the West Palm campus, it was very clear to me that I wanted to continue to share the gospel to men and women who had experienced and were experiencing similar things to me. And so I didn't know what I was supposed to do, because I looked at my schedule and I saw that all of the time I was spending doing the tree service was actually taking away from the time that I was supposed to be doing schoolwork. And all of the time that I was supposed to be doing schoolwork to study to become a pastor was taking a time away from the time that I was able to go out and look for new jobs, and I was supposed to answer the phone and find all of these different aspects and learn about the tree business world. And these were two good things. I was going to be able to make a lot of money and provide for my family doing the tree service, or I was going to help a lot of people doing the recovery ministry. And I didn't know what to do, because I looked at a whiteboard one day and I saw the small amount of time that I had to sleep and to enjoy my life. And I realized that I couldn't do both. And it was in that moment I realized that I had just been moving forward with both. I didn't pray. I didn't ask my sponsor. I didn't ask my accountability. I was keeping secrets from both of the people that were teaching me how to move forward in life. But I thought that it was something that was going to be good. And I was just praying to God. I was like, God, just make these pieces fit. I didn't know how it was going to work, but I just knew that all of these things seemed to be good. So I just wanted God to make all of these things fit. And I realized in a moment that that wasn't what he was supposed to do. It wasn't what I was supposed to do. And so I realized I have to pray for what God's will is and his intention for my life is. And then I had to think about what I was pursuing in that moment. In that moment, I was pursuing pride. I enjoyed all of the attention I was getting. I enjoyed all of the people saying, Kurtis, you're going to do really good with these trees, and you're going to help a lot of people in this ministry. This is going to be so good. And I was just eating it all up. But I realized I had taken on way too much. And so I prayed. I asked God for his wisdom. I wanted to know what his will was for my life. I was very honest with my wife, and I said, I don't know if I can do all this. I asked a couple people around here that I know and trust have good intentions for my life. I asked what they thought about it. And then I went home and I journaled. And I remember journaling because it was one of the most profound moments I've had in my life when it comes to how it is that I should decide to move forward. And I prayed to God. I confessed that I had procrastinated and that I had forgot him in my pursuit of moving forward. And I asked, God, what do you want me to know about this procrastination? What do you want me to know about forgetting you inside of this decision? And he told me, he said, Kurtis, you left your life of crime and addiction and pursued a life of purity with me. And you've experienced blessings beyond what you could have ever imagined. And he said, Kurtis, you left your life as a bachelor and as being single, and you pursued a life with Sarah in marriage. And you've experienced blessings beyond what you could have ever imagined. And he said, Kurtis, I am calling you out of your ways of labor, and I am moving you into something new so that you can experience blessings beyond what you could ever imagine. It was in that moment I had to text the people who wanted to invest in the business. And we had already met with accountants. We had already talked about big purchases for chainsaws, for trucks, for lifts, for stump grinders, for all of this different equipment. And I had to let them know, hey guys, I can't do this with you anymore. I had to cancel the insurance policy that I had just purchased for the whole next year. And I had lost like $400 or $500 in that transaction because they said, well, hey, we already covered you. And I said, all right, I got to do it. And I want to highlight something here that I feel God has blessed my efforts, even though I'm not perfect. He has showed me his will for my life incrementally. Step by step, he has revealed what he has wanted me to do inside of his will for my life. Now, if I would have stopped drugs and alcohol, and he would have said, hey, man, you're going to go to university and you're going to marry Sarah, I would have been like, you know what? Maybe this wasn't the right decision for me because that sounds like it's way too big. But instead, he showed me things piece by piece so that I could move inside of his will and I could be strong while I was doing it. I wasn't going to take on too much at one time. And I know that when I had tried to get clean and sober in my past, that's exactly what happened. I took on way too much too fast. I would be 90 days clean. Now I'd be like, man, I feel like $1 million. I'm going to get a girlfriend. I'm going to start a new job. I'm going to move out. I'm going to do all this stuff. And then all of this stress would come on me. And then I would realize that my recovery wasn't strong enough. My relationship with God wasn't strong enough. I would fold under the pressure. I would relapse and I would use again. And so I can look to what he says in Ephesians 4:2-3. He says, be humble, be gentle, be patient. I wasn't humble in those moments. I thought that I would be able to just do this stuff right away. I wasn't patient. I wanted to overcome the world all at once. If I had measured what my pursuit was against the way that I should be doing it, I would have realized that I needed to slow down. I needed to maybe ask my sponsor how it is that I should move forward. So it wasn't easy. And I am definitely not perfect. But that's why letting go and letting God is a stance for life. It's consistently turning back to God when we find ourselves acting inside of our character defects, acting inside of our shortcomings. We say, God, please take this. Our willingness is allowing him to speak into our life so that he can give us strength so that we know how to move forward past it. And that's really why I think James 4:10 is the sermon series passage. Humble yourselves before the Lord, and he will lift you up. It's because when we consistently turn to God, we show our humility to him, and we show our need for him. And he shows us how it is that we're able to move forward so that he can lift us up. Because it's not going to be without some effort on your part. And so, I want to leave you guys with the question: is your pursuit worth it? Thank you for letting me share.